Well, President Trump just keeps delivering win after win for the American public. His next win that he has is the NCAA has folded to his demands that they protect women in women's sports. What a wild idea that is. Protecting women in women's sports. But hey, if you're new here, drop down below, hit that notification button, make sure that you never miss another video from us by subscribing to us. So the NCAA, or the National Collegiate Athletic Association, has agreed after President Trump's sweeping executive order that he signed a few days ago, says that they will change their participation rules that will bar transgenders from competing in women college sports. This is a huge win for President Trump. This is a huge win for Republicans, for America, for the world, for common sense, for sanity, for people who know how to think straight. This is a huge win. It's ridiculous that this is even something we have to talk about, that we have to say that banning transgender men, mentally ill men, from women's sports, from women's locker rooms is something we have to celebrate as a win right now. This should just be a given. We should have never had to fight back against it, but this is where we are. Now, President Trump on Wednesday signed the executive order that will set in motion a rewrite on Title IX that would withhold federal funding from schools that allowed transgender athletes to play in women's sports. Now, the NCAA president, Charlie Baker, immediately stated that the NCAA would comply with Trump's executive order, saying, quote, "The NCAA is an organization made up of 1,100 colleges and universities in all 50 states that collectively enroll more than 500,000 student athletes. We strongly believe that clear, consistent, and uniform eligibility standards would best serve today's student athletes instead of patchwork of conflicting state laws and court decisions. To that end, President Trump's order provides a clear national standard." Absolutely, I 100% agree. We don't, on an issue like this, there's things that I'd be okay with, where, the federal government pulls back. Okay, Oregon's going to do it this way, Tennessee's going to do it this way, New York's going to do it. They can do things the way they want. But when it comes to something so uniform like this, like excluding mentally ill men, transgender men, from women's sports, women's locker rooms, women's bathrooms, it's a national standard that is absolutely needed at this point in our nation's history. Now, the NCAA Board of Governors is reviewing the executive order that will take necessary steps to align with the policy in the next coming days, and they're going to issue further guidance after that. They claim they're going to continue to foster a welcoming environment on campuses for all student athletes, which is absolutely, we should be welcoming to all student athletes. The NCAA should be. But if you're a man, you're not going to compete against women. When there is an alternative of, if there's, a poker team or a blackjack team, sure, men and women can compete against each other. But when you're in a sport where men are going to have a physical advantage over you, a biological advantage over you, and when they offer, let's say golf, they offer men's golf and women's golf. Soccer, they offer men's soccer and women's soccer. When they offer both of them, you have to go where your biological sex is. It's just, there's no way around that. Now, they need to make these changes immediately to these policies. Now, I know they're reviewing it. They need to make these changes immediately, and they need to issue an apology to all of the other student athletes, the ones who are outed by this lunatic right here. What was his name? Leah Thomas, I think it was his name. Just what a frickin' loser. Just my God. It's like, Lord help us. But what have these changes here implemented? Now, Trump, in another order, defined that sex is, quote, an individual, immutable biological classification as either male or female. It's like, why do we have to sit around and pretend? Why do we have to pretend? Why can we not just recognize that men are men, women are women, there's a biological sex, and it's just as simple, it's just as simple as that. There's no other way around it. You can't just change your gender just because you feel like changing your gender. That's just not how this works. You are born as either a male or a female. We needed to set a clear definition of how many sexes there are. A national standard. There are two sexes. This is what they're classified as. There is no confusion. There can be no manipulation. There is no confusion in the wording here. And the American people absolutely support this decision by President Trump. Absolutely support this decision. Now, in a recent CNN poll, it showed that 69% of Americans support President Trump's actions that he took here. And it looks like my computer froze, and we are not... Huh. Here we go. Now, let's take a look at this right here. This is directly from CNN.
I think these numbers...
Let's take a listen.
...are really illuminating on this topic because I just think there's such a clear trend among the American public. So transgender female athletes in women's sports, only 18% of the country says that they should be, in fact, allowed to participate in women's sports. Compare this to the opposition. I mean, my goodness gracious, 79%. You rarely get 79% of the country to agree on anything, but they do, in fact, agree on the idea of opposing transgender female athletes in women's sports. But it's not just the here and now, Laura. It's not just the here and now. What we're actually seeing is a trend on this particular issue, and it's going in the direction of opposition. So take a look here. Okay, transgendered female athletes, and amongst those Americans who oppose them in women's sports, back in 2021, it was 62%. A majority, but, not anywhere close to a ginormous majority, right? A clear majority, but not a ginormous majority. But then again, you look here in 2025, you see it at 79%. So it's not just that the majority of Americans are opposed to transgender female athletes in women's sports. It's that the opposition has become considerably larger in just the last 4 years. I think these numbers...
I love it. This comment right here. Female is a biological term. By definition, there are 0 transgender female athletes. Thank God. And was the polling at 62% back in 2021? But that is still a pretty damn big majority. You're pretty darn close to 2/3 right there. Even wild, far left-wing activists like this lady right here. Her name is, I wonder if we can get back to it here. Let me get it pulled up for you. Here we go. Now, this is Martina Navratilova. I think that's how you say her last name, but she is a far left-wing, crazy activist. Just look in here. Telling me to stick to tennis equals a block. Hashtag vote blue. I think that says enough for what side of the political aisle she's on. But let's see what she shared here. And this is just a video, but it says, I hate that Democrats have totally failed women and girls on this very clear issue of women's sports being for females only. You hate that the Democrats... Yes, we all hate that the Democrats are a total failure. And guess what? It's not just on women's and girls' issues like this. They're a complete failure across the board. Complete failure. But, I don't expect her to ever wake up to that reality. So, ultimately, this is a developing story at this point. This is one of the the bigger organizations that's immediately come out and said, hey, we're going to fall in line. Now, one organization I do want to point out that's already come out and said that they are not going to fall in line with President Trump's order. And here's from Dustin Grage from Twitter. Breaking. The Minnesota State High School League says it will ignore Trump's new executive order and continue allowing biological males to compete in girls' sports. Ridiculous. But do you expect anything different coming from Minnesota? I really didn't expect anything different. But what basically they're saying, and here's directly from Fox 9 here, that the Minnesota State High School Sports League will follow Minnesota law on transgender athletes, not President Trump's order, this violates the supremacy clause of the United States Constitution. Federal law supersedes it supersedes state law. You idiots. It's just sick that these demented people want to protect the 1% of mentally ill men who want to jump over and play women's sports. It's like, what a freaking joke. What a joke. And it's kind of embarrassing coming from Minnesota that this is what you guys can do, but not surprised here. But ultimately, it's a developing story. The Minnesota State High School Sports League, they're one state's high school sports league. We're going to see as more and more news on this comes out. We're going to keep you up to date on other organizations that take steps to secure women's sports and which ones that are not going to follow through and are most likely going to lose federal funding, that you're not going to fall in line with Trump's executive order. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'm guessing there's not going to be many people who are opposed to this, but let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, even about the Minnesota State High School League, their sports league. What are your thoughts on that? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And that's all for today, folks. Thank you.